Welcome back to another episode of Bitfinex Talks. Today I'm here with Adam Simmons from Radix. Adam, how are you? Thank you for joining me.
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show today. Looking forward to it.
For those who are not familiar with what Radix is, can you please explain a little bit about the project?
I'd love to. So Radix is a layer one network. So similar to things like Ethereum, Avalanche, Solana, etc. We're a smart contract layer, really focused on DeFi. Now, there's a couple of unique things about Radix. First, and probably one of the coolest, is that we've been around for quite a while. So work started on Radix back in 2013. Our founder, Dan, got bitten by the Bitcoin bug, saw all the promise of what Web3 and crypto offered to the world, and decided to start playing around with it. And essentially what he saw was that with all this promise, there was a need for millions and potentially billions of people to be using this, and that there was no way that any blockchain or distributed ledger technology at the time could come anywhere close to meeting that amount of demand. So Dan and the rest of the team spent the next kind of 5-6 years working on really solving scalability, and solving scalability with no compromises. And the end result of that is our own unique consensus algorithm called Cerberus. Now, without getting too technical, the cool thing about Cerberus is that it has what's called unlimited linear scalability, which means that as you add more nodes to the network, you directly increase throughput forever. And it does that in a way that doesn't break something called atomic composability. So even though it's sharded, any part of the network, any shard can interact with any other shard atomically in a single transaction. So it behaves all the same benefits of a single shard network like Ethereum today, but with all the parallelization and throughput of a highly sharded network.
So can you tell us a little bit about why this is different from other cryptos? I heard you mention Ethereum and Solana and stuff like that. What sets Radix apart?
So really, Radix, we are taking a full stack approach to how we build. So as I mentioned, we've got obviously our base consensus layer Cerberus, which is unique to Radix. But we didn't stop there. When we kind of cracked that nut of how do you create scalability that can work for billions of users and hundreds of millions of businesses globally, was that the only thing stopping adoption of Web3? And what we found after speaking to like 1,000 developers, both in crypto and outside of crypto, was actually scalability is only one of the problems. The next big thing was buildability and the developer experience. So one of the things we heard from all these developers is building DeFi today really sucks. It's hard. The time to talent is multiple years. And even then, you still go to bed as a developer wondering if you're going to get all of your funds stolen the next day. From an exploit or a hack or something, no matter how good of a developer you are. And obviously that sucks for developers, but it also sucks for end users. So the way we solved this was by building our own execution environment. So Radix doesn't use the EVM, it uses the Radix engine, and our own programming language based on Rust called Scripto. Now, Scripto and the Radix engine have been in early access since last year, so December 2021. And in that time, we've had about 4,500 people download the tooling and mess around with this. And we've had a great response so far. And the way I describe it to non-technical people is Radix engine and Scripto is like having a game engine for DeFi and Web3. So those of you who aren't familiar with kind of game engines and how they work is back in the 90s, before game engines existed, if you wanted to make a video game, your first step was doing really basic low-level things like defining physics, lighting, shadows, how gravity works. And then you spend a little bit of your time making the game fun. Now, obviously, that low-level stuff was really, really hard, which is why you would clip through walls or you'd get little bugs in the game that were really annoying. And obviously, in a video game, that sucked. But in DeFi today, it's exactly the same, except rather than you putting a gun on the table or something and it falling through the world, it's $1 million and it falls through the world, never to be seen again. So that really sucks. What game engines did for the video game industry was let developers focus on building cool games by giving them standardization and assets they need throughout. And that didn't limit what they could do. It just gave them the fundamental of physics that every game needed and let them build on top of that if they wanted to. So if their game was in space, for example, in the game engine, you just turn the gravity slider to 0. It still keeps all the other important bits you need, but you can customize the bits that you want. And the Radix engine and Scripto is exactly the same for building Web3. And one of the big ways it does that is by making assets a native function of the language. So if you look at like Ethereum and any EVM-based chain, what many people don't realize is that assets such as ERC20 tokens are just a smart contract. There's a standard that redefines what an asset is every single time. In Radix and using the Radix engine, that is a native function of the language, which gives you a whole heap of powers as developers, but also means that as a user, you can be confident that your assets are moving safely, securely, and intuitively, which obviously is a great relief for everyone using DeFi.
You mentioned that you guys aren't using the EVM. We've seen a lot of other blockchains kind of implement EVM to have compatible smart contracts. Is Radix compatible with these other EVM chains in any way?
So Radix isn't compatible with other EVM chains. It was a design choice we made early on. And short term, yeah, there's obviously some challenges there. You can't just copy and paste code over and deploy straight away. However, we're able to unlock a whole heap of benefits long term. So for a start, things like assets being a native function, way like security as the primary function of the language and the execution rather than an afterthought. You still have all the power. Scripto is Turing complete. But the way assets work, our assets are finite state machines. And that means they have predictable outcomes, which does a lot for security. It also means that you can do some really interesting stuff at higher levels. So for example, when you sign a transaction on MetaMask, for example, you're effectively blind signing. Your UI in your dApp, if you connect MetaMask to Uniswap or something, says, do you want to approve this transaction? And you basically have to trust whatever the dApp UI said is what happens, because all you see in MetaMask is a transaction hash, which you just have to cross your fingers, click approve, hope for the best. In Radix, because of the Radix engine being built in the way we have, we can do something which we call the transaction manifest. So in a smart contract in Radix, the transaction is actually human readable. So you can see like on a Uniswap swap, for example, or in an AMM swap of any kind, you could see like, oh, I'm going to send 5 token A in, and the network expects me to get 6 token B back. And it'll actually show you in real human readable terms, that's what's going to happen because the movement of assets is understood by the engine, and that can be extrapolated up into the wallet layer. The other important thing, though, is you can set guardrails in as a user. So in Uniswap, obviously, you have slippage. It's built into the smart contract, and it's very complicated. In Radix, you can set those guardrails directly as the user at the wallet level in the transaction manifest. So you can say, oh, okay, the network expects me to get 8 token B back in that example. Well, if I'm going to get less than 7.5, don't do the transaction. And so then it's not up to the dApp developer to put these guardrails of things like slippage in place. It's actually directly baked into the network, and the transaction just won't process. So all of these things are massive benefits that are only possible by taking a full stack approach. You can't upgrade MetaMask to have something like the transaction manifest because the EVM doesn't know how to actually communicate that to that layer. You'd have to build custom things into the smart contract itself.
If you can highlight only one of the features, which one would it be?
So for me, I'd probably say the short. I'm going to cheat slightly. I say short term, it's Scripto and the Radix engine, and the fact that you can build so easily. And the reason I say that is my opinion on any kind of layer 1 network like Radix is it's a multi-sided market. You have capital and you have dApps. Now, we've seen through things like DeFi Summer and every bull run, the capital comes flooding in when there's good things for capital to be allocated within. What we know is from things like the Electric Capital report, there's only about 19,000 developers worldwide working full-time in Web3. That is tiny compared to the 27 million developers there are. And what Scripto and the Radix engine allows is more people to get talented at building Web3 far, far quicker than they can in Solidity. That, to me, leads to the end result of you getting far more choice in the dApps being built. You get far more interesting dApps, more powerful dApps, more secure dApps being built in Radix than you do in EVM chains, which means the capital has more opportunity. And as you get more dApps, you get more capital. And as you get more capital, you get more dApps. And so that's the most exciting bit for me in the short and midterm. Long term, it's got to be our consensus mechanism, though, Cerberus. And it's kind of boring in the sense that it's just how it should be. A network that can scale forever with low fees and low finality, no matter how much demand you get. Because just as we saw with like Ethereum in the DeFi summer, the worst thing you want is hundreds of billions of dollars coming flooding in, and then suddenly it all grinding to a halt because fees go into hundreds of dollars just for doing a simple swap. So I say that's the long-term one, because short-term scalability doesn't matter as long as you can scale enough. You don't need endless scalability if you don't have endless demand. But long-term, being able to scale for everyone on the planet is essential.
What's the response been like from developers in regards to the ease of building on top of Radix? Are there lots of projects in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so as of right now, there's about 140 announced projects. If you go to Radix list, that's a community site that tracks many of the projects being built. And that's amazing for me because Scripto only went into early access, as I said, in December 2021. And that was in local machine only. It's currently in an AlphaNet stage. So it's deployed against an AlphaNet, goes into BetaNet at the end of 2022. And then our mainnet's upgraded to have smart contracts on the Radix engine in Scripto in Q2 2023. And already we're seeing all these people building. We've had over 4,500 people download the Scripto tooling. But the thing that I really love is the things that we see people make. So early in the year, we were running just simple competitions like build a DEX, build a lending app, build an Oracle with really small prize pools, like $5,000 worth of XRD, the Radix token. And we were seeing people come up with really cool, innovative ways of building these applications with an asset-oriented approach using Scripto. And it wasn't just the cool things people were building, but it was the people who were building them were awesome. So at least two of the people who ranked in these competitions were not professional coders. Two of them had not coded professionally ever, and they'd only picked up Scripto like 2-3 months before and been like, hey, this looks fun. I like Radix. I'm going to try coding with it. And they built functional oracles or functional dexes in just that time. And to me, that is awesome as a response. And we have internally a fun little tracker for all the cool quotes we see. And you get people come out being like, I can't believe I managed to build this in just a weekend. Or we've had people sit there going like, oh, I've worked at Google and this language is absolutely incredible. Like, I can't believe how intuitive it is. And feedback like that as one of the teams working on the Radix network is just so awesome to see people actually picking up and using it. And then firsthand, I mean, we've run now 2 what we call Dev Swarm events, where we run like daily workshops in multiple cities all over Europe. And we get hundreds of devs turn up who've never used Scripto, many never even used Web3. And like the most recent one was, we'll show you how NFTs work, explain about them, and teach you how to build an NFT sale platform in a single day. And we get people going from never having coded Web3 to having a functioning NFT marketplace built in Scripto in one day. And that to me is just phenomenal to see and be a part of.
My next question is, can you briefly discuss the tokenomics and the issuance of the Radix token?
Yeah, so Radix is a fixed supply token. So there's a max supply of 24 billion. Total supply at the moment is just over 12 billion. The difference there is from emissions. So it's a delegated proof of stake network. And emissions are about 300 million XRD a year, distributed proportionally based on delegated stake. 2.4 billion of that is indefinitely locked in a stablecoin reserve. It'll be burnt if it's not used, but that's indefinitely locked for there. And all of the rest of the tokens are unlocked and in circulating supply.
And what role does the token play within the Radix ecosystem?
So XRD is the native token of Radix. It's similar to Ethereum, AVAX, Sol, etc. So the primary function of it is to pay network fees and also to be part of the delegated proof of stake system to secure the network.
What problem would you say that you guys are trying to solve with Radix?
A really simple but really hard one, which is how do you make Web3 viable for mainstream users? So the thing I always say to people, no matter how much of a crypto enthusiast you are your friends, are your family, are your colleagues really going to use Web3 today? Are they really going to sit there and put their entire life savings into a system where you've got to store a seed phrase in like 3 different locations securely, and that backs up your entire net worth? Are they really going to be confident blind signing transactions in MetaMask? No, they're not. Are they really going to pay hundreds of dollars to do a simple token swap when the network gets congested? None of these things are okay. And these are exactly the sort of things that Radix is solving. And the way we're solving them is by, from the very, very start, looking at the end state of, if we're going to have 8 billion people and hundreds of millions of businesses using Web3 as this global asset layer, it's got to be able to scale and meet the needs of all of those people. And today, Web3 isn't doing that. It's not realizing the vision that we all know it can do. And in my honest opinion, Radix is the only solution that's really looking at how do we solve on that scale and in a way that actually all of our friends and family are going to be able to use it.
You guys mentioned that you have an event coming up in December. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
I'd love to. So RadFi is happening on December 8th, 2022. It's going to be a live stream event. If you want to tune in, go to radixdlt.com/radfi, enter your email, we'll send you all the details. It'll be live streamed up on YouTube. RadFi has been my pet project for about the last 9 months, and I'm so excited about it. So RadFi, the way I describe it to people is really putting together and presenting our full vision for how mainstream Web3 will work on Radix. And it's not about just one bit. It's not about just the consensus, just our great developer experience, just the great stuff we've been working on in the last year on user experience, but about how all of those things work together and how they're only uniquely possible on Radix. And so what I'd say to anyone is, if listening to this, you're saying, hey, Radix sounds kind of cool, I'd like to know more, I'd like to know how it works, I just say, tune into RadFi. Give me 30 minutes of your time. And if you get to the end of that 30 minutes of the RadFi stream and you're like, I don't like this, fine, close the tab and we'll go our separate ways. But I can guarantee you we're showing some really cool things there that are going to get, they still get me really excited about the space and what we can do. So I can't wait to see what other people think of it.
My next question is, why should investors be interested in the Radix project?
So for me, it comes back to that same point, is if you believe Web3 has the promise to make the world better, and I mean that in both the pragmatic way of making like the global financial system more transparent, more usable, more open for everyone, and also more efficient at what it does, and also the social way of being able to give people more access to opportunities within the global financial system and how they control their assets and custody their own funds, then you should be interested in Radix, because that's exactly the same as we've done. We've started from the end state of, if the 400 trillion global financial system was running on Web3, we believe that world would be a better place, both for the people using it and all the people who currently aren't able to use it. It's going to be more pragmatic and more commercially viable, because it's going to open up a whole host of new opportunities that don't exist in the siloed, archaic financial system of today. And we've worked backwards on what technology and what functionality would a network need to be able to achieve that vision. And that's what Radix has spent the last 9 years working on.
Another question that I had is, why did you guys decide to be listed with Bitfinex?
So Bitfinex has been a launch partner for us. It's been fantastic working with them. So when soon after our token went live as an ERC20 token initially to help with distribution before our mainnet went live, we were working with Bitfinex. And as a large exchange with a great user base and a great reputation in the space, they were a fantastic launch partner for us. And we've been listed there ever since. And they were also the first exchange to list our native token XRD when we did that swap over. And looking forward to spending many more years working with Bitfinex to bring even more people into the Radix ecosystem.
How do you feel about the importance of education for projects like Radix?
So I think there's 2 stages to it, and there's 2 levels of importance. So at the stage Radix is now, the first version of our mainnet's been live for just over a year. It's processed 1 million transactions. It's had no downtime, and it's got all these cool features coming. We've got RadFi coming up on the 8th of December, where we're unveiling all the cool stuff we've been working on in user experience and developer experience. That's a big part for education. Understanding how we're doing what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing really matters to people who are going to be the early adopters and the innovators within this space. And so education there, massively important. As we get later, though, I think education in a weird way becomes less important. If we've done our job on user experience being really intuitive and really secure, we shouldn't need to be educating people on all these complex terms or difficult ways of interacting with Web3. It should just be intuitive. They should just pick it up. Likewise, when we scale, I shouldn't have to explain to my friends, my family, my colleagues that, oh yeah, you want to use that thing on Ethereum. Oh, wait until Sunday morning because the fees will be lower then. Or, oh, make sure you've done your own research to make sure you're not going to get hacked, or this isn't like a spend approval site. Make sure you're not getting phished and all these sort of things, because no one wants to deal with that stress. They just want to use a system that works. So I think long term, education should be basically unnecessary. I mean, how many people listening today knows how video is transmitted over the internet? When you're watching this or listening to it, how many do you know what TCP/IP is doing, how that works, how your ISP is set up, how they're managing their bandwidth and everything else? Probably a handful of you do. Congratulations to those who do understand that. But most of you are just like, I don't care. If YouTube works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's a binary thing. And at that point, you don't need educating into how YouTube works or why YouTube works. You just want to watch cool videos. And Web3, I think, is exactly the same, is that when we solve this, and at Radix, I genuinely believe we've solved many of these problems that are preventing that state, is like, it just works. It shouldn't need explaining to people why you want this. It should be like, it's better. It's radically better than what's come before, both for managing your assets, both for interaction with finance, and even doing cool things that we can't even imagine now, like using NFTs as tickets, for example. Like, these are all the things that should just be really intuitive and easy for people to interact with.
We've heard a lot about the unique solutions that the Radix team has implemented for Web3, but is there any issues with Web3 that you guys haven't been able to solve?
So I think there's many which we can't solve directly, because a lot of this is through things that are outside of our control. Ultimately, we're an infrastructure platform at Radix. We have our own, obviously, consensus programming language. We're doing some amazing stuff on user experience that we're giving away for free to developers, but it's the developers who are front and center on our mind. Our job is to give builders everything they need to build this highly interconnected Web3 future. And it's up to them to go and build it, just in the same way as something like YouTube isn't there to make great videos. YouTube is there to empower creators to make cool videos. So that's one hard part. I think another hard part is just getting people to understand the space, and the things we've seen recently in the market with centralized entities acting in very bad ways has damaged the trust of the space. And it's going to take a long time for that to be fixed. And there isn't a magic silver bullet to solve those problems. All we can do is what we've always done at Radix, which is look at the long term, look at the big, like at the end state, and act with integrity and honesty along the way. And that means making sure that we're aware of things that are coming down the road, making sure that we're conscious of how regulation is possibly going to be applied and how that may impact people, making sure that we're being fair to the people building on our network, and being honest and open with them about how we're going to get there. Because yeah, Web3 today, we're still super early. Like, this is still the days people compare adoption to things like smartphones and the iPhone. We're not even at the iPhone point yet at the industry. We're not there where Steve Jobs has stood up and been like, slide to unlock, and everyone goes, wow, this is great. We're still way earlier than that. We're still there with like the Palm Pilot, which is like just used by a handful of people. We haven't quite worked out how it works, but we know it's going to be awesome. And so a lot of this is just people really seeing, using, understanding, and staying on board with this, because I honestly believe that when Web3 takes off, and it is a when, not an if, it's going to reshape the way we interact with the world, just to the same degree that the internet became the global data layer for the world and all the possibilities that opened. Web3 is going to become the global asset layer for the world, and that's going to be monumental in this change for how we will interact day to day.
So we know that you have the RadFi event coming up on December 8th. If people want to know more about the Radix project, how can they follow you on social media?
So easiest place to go is just radixdlt.com. You'll find loads of information of us, all our socials linked there. You can find me as well. I'm at Adam_XRD on Twitter if you want to follow me, at RadixDLT on Twitter as well. And yeah, I definitely recommend everyone tune into the RadFi event. Like, as I say, give me 30 minutes of your time on that event. And if you aren't wowed, then it's 30 minutes of your time. If you are wowed, that'll probably be the most eye-opening 30 minutes of your life, which I honestly believe it will. And it will make it the moment that you understand why Web3 can do all the things that it's promised for many, many years.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to add?
No, I think you covered it all really well. And I'd just like to say, use this opportunity that I always do to thank the amazing people building behind the scenes at Radix, all the amazing people in our developer community and on our Telegram and Discord, because we're really, really glad to have such an amazing group of people supporting the project who've supported it for many years. And if you've ever got any questions, our Telegram and Discord is a great place to ask. And if you're a developer, head on over to developers.radixdlt.com to find out how to get started with Scripto.
Thank you very much for joining me for the podcast. And it's been great talking to you about Radix.
Thank you very much.